11th day of May, 2023. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Steigerman.
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Present.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
Okay, so we're all here, or present, and this is our, we do this 3 or 4 times a year?
3 times.
3 times a year.
The middle of the year one. Just before the
Every
business year.
4 months, roughly?
Yeah.
All right, so we, the town board, is also the commissioners of our water district, the only, well, the one in Hampton Bays, we technically have one on the other side too, but that one is operated differently. So the Hampton Bays Water District, and we have with us a number of people. James Cappers, who is Assistant Director, but is sort of acting as Director at the moment, because Rich McEwen just retired. John Collins from H2M, and once again,
Chris Weber.
Chris Weber from H2M, who are consultants, engineers for the Water District. So who's going to lead this presentation? Bruce?
Yeah, it's just a presentation on the status of the capital plan,
Okay.
what was been done, what we're doing, what we still have to do.
Which capital plan is this? Is this the 10-year capital plan?
The 10-year capital plan, yeah.
The one that was presented to the community in 2018, 2019?
Yeah.
And put it,
And then do we
Right.
modify that?
Charles?
Because originally, you guys did not put that plan together. That was
Done by D&B.
Virgo Bartolucci,
Yeah,
right?
that was a
Didn't know we had a
decision made by the board to have a second set of eyes other than H2M. Revise the plan with the input of H2M and the water.
Right, so now have we
Okay.
modified it a little bit? We
No,
have?
not yet.
No?
Not yet.
Okay.
Got copies for that.
And now,
Yeah.
what year was that? The
January 2020 was adopted.
2020? Okay, so we're 3 years into that. Yeah, I'd kind of like to see where we stand on, because there was a timeline.
It was, and so I have the
We've added
timeline.
projects and sort of deleted projects, or postponed.
Yep, I have the timeline here, if anybody wants a copy of the timeline, that he'll show up there.
Do you have extra copies?
Sure.
Yep. And then this is the actual whole presentation, he'll show.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Then I'll have to go
get
to the clerk.
timeline. Sure, it's got over.
They all gotta go to Sunday.
Gotcha.
So do
That's
you need
gotta
to
go
stamp
to
these in or no?
Oh, it's gotta go to-
I'll just pass them all.
Yeah.
Right.
She can.
Thank you.
they got to get stamped in.
Technically, it's a fire
Official
station.
meeting.
Mhm.
We made a lot of copies just in case a lot of the public came, so they could have a
Yeah,
copy.
there's lots of people out there.
Don't laugh, people are watching.
I'm sure. Yeah, this is a hybrid meeting, so people can certainly watch. At work sessions, we don't allow outside participation, but.
Right? No, they're all the same. No,
Yeah,
I'll
once the
grab one of those.
presentation, and then next is gonna be the
There's going to be an extra.
timeline of.
So it's one.
Yes. That's right.
So this is the same as what we're gonna see on the screen?
Yep,
Oh.
the one thing is, there should be a table 7-1 that's
Right
coming.
here.
Rick, there's an
That's
extra
gonna be
one?
tough to see on the screen.
What's that?
so-
I passed too many down. Yeah.
I was gonna keep two.
So Sunday
More
doesn't have
if
to
you need
stand.
them.
Yeah, I know.
There's another table coming our way. right?
Yeah, that's
There is.
The timeline.
that's the big one, because it's gonna be tough to see up on the screen.
And so that's also, yeah, that's in the presentation as well. Right? It's the same.
I think there's some. We're expecting a large audience. That's good.
Okay, looks good.
All right. Okay, so here we're gonna go over the capital plan and projects for the last 10, or the last 5 years, and for the future of the next 10 years. So, 10-year capital plan summary, which James was in 2020, we issued it, correct? We have 20 projects at 34.3 million over 10 years. The background here, like John said, is going to be difficult to see, so that's the table that you're seeing
Right.
separately from the
Can we
files
take a
there.
little time on this table to see sort of what actually did happen in the years that there was supposed to?
Yeah, we're going to go through that.
We can go through that.
Okay.
John, do you want me to just jump forward to the next one?
Yep, I would jump forward to the, what's been done already.
Yeah, okay. All right, so going through what's been performed from 2020 to 2023, we have Plan 4, the iron manganese treatment plant, which we've obviously discussed a lot here, completed and approved by the Health Department on October 25th, 2021. Total cost for that project was $2.78 million versus the capital plan had a budget of $4.328 million. As part of this project, and you'll see in that table, one of the things that they had in the 10-year plan was to do some chemical room upgrades. As doing this project, we kind of took the initiative, did some of the chemical room upgrades during it, and at this point, no further work is projected for that plant number 4. Any questions on that one? Secondary at plant number 4, we did the Bella Pond elevated storage tank rehab. Again, completed and approved on June 24th, 2021. Total cost of $2.55 million versus the $4.22 million, which was in the capital plan at the escalated.
But this is the Bellows
Bellows
Pond
Pond, correct, yep.
$1
tank
million.
improvement, so that's lower on the list there, right? So,
Yeah, that's further down with the storage tanks, yeah.
under tank improvements,
If you recall, that was the tank where we had the coatings peeling
Yep.
off on the inside.
so we had that down for 2021, so, but, and also 2023, no?
And-
That's,
And it needed to be painted.
punk wash.
Oh, that's a different tank, yeah, in 2023, so yeah, so that was taken care of, and that was, what, a total budget like 4 million for that?
Yep, and
4.22, which is what was approved in the capital plan, but total cost ended up being 2.55,
So much less than we anticipated.
less, yes.
Yep.
It's good?
And that included painting the outside,
Yeah, the
right?
exterior, yeah.
Totally.
Total.
outside and inside.
Okay, great. That picture looks a little old.
I apologize for that.
No, it's okay. I get it.
Continuing on, so we have the, most recently, the Shinnecock Bay crossing was completed and approved on July 14th, 2022. Total cost of $3.17 million versus $3.5 million in the capital plan. The only thing that's remaining at this time is to remove that existing main at the bottom of the bay. We have approval for it, it's just a matter of waiting on schedule for the barge and diving crew to come out. So
That's
we,
it.
we received word from them. They're
Is that the
expect-
one, that's across the bay?
That's across the bay, correct?
So
yeah.
we had that for,
2.5.
we had it in 2023, right?
Mhm.
Or we sped that up, I think, right?
Yep.
Yep,
And we had money in there for 2024, but that project's already done.
correct.
That's done.
And what was the cost? We had what, we had 2.5 in for it, roughly?
3.5.
3.5.
How much, 3.5? Or
Well, just for the Shinnecock Bay, we had 2.1.
2.6? No? Between, I'm looking at 2023, 1.27, and then 1.32 in 2024.
And there's also,
2021.
2021 has budgeted. If you go all the way to the first
The last
column,
line.
it'll show you the totals.
Yeah, that escalated total.
For Shinnecock Bay Crossing. I'm not seeing that.
On the
See, it's-
distribution improvements? It's the
Yeah,
first line
this-
item underneath that. If you go to the first column, 2019 estimated cost.
Oh, 2019, I'm not even looking at
Yeah.
that one. So there's money in 2019.
And then all the way at the end, it tells you what the escalated total would be.
Oh, okay, so it's
Which was 2.59.
2.59, okay.
I'm a little confused because this in these figures
Yeah.
don't match these.
Should.
I got 2019 estimated cost, 25 million here I have it at 29, that's on the district totals, is 29 million. I'm just trying to figure out where.
All right, I see what happened. This is our bad. This table, that table has 20 projects, and the extra project is Rampasture Road. The table right here doesn't have the Rampasture Road.
Oh, got it.
All right, so we added a project.
Yeah.
So we added a
The
project.
final-
Which
the
brought it up
final
to
one,
29,
yeah,
right?
On the
I'm sorry about
adopted
that.
one has the.
Okay,
So the real total is 29.
Yes.
right, so this is based on the approved capital plan, and then we added to it.
Yeah, the
But we
the
had
approved-
savings as
the
well,
approved
so-
capital plan is the one with the package that says 20 projects at
20.
3.3 across it. That's the one that's included in the overall
I
presentation.
mean, everything else, well, yeah,
And then the
'cause-
table 7.1 includes Rampasture, or the other way around?
Other way around.
well, but then you also have,
There were
for
some minor.
2021,
there
you
were some
have,
minor
it goes from
adjustments.
8 to 10.
Yep, there were some minor adjustments in the monies to be spent, yes. So
Oops.
you're best off going to the blue one.
Okay,
Because that includes the
Yes.
projects that were in the 10-year capital plan.
No.
no, these are the 10-year, yeah, right? These are the 20.
What happened was, I only have a draft, and yesterday James gave us the final, so,
Oh, so the actual D and B plan included Rampasture?
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This, that was the draft that they
That's-
sent, and then
Oh,
we,
this is based on, and so
yeah,
this
we
is.
corrected them to add the
So this is
Rampasture.
better for us.
So the blue one is the best, and I apologize.
No, that's okay, so.
But there are other columns that have that.
No worries, so, all right, so the
Those distinctions
Shinnecock Bay crossing, which was to go all the way to 24, we got done early. Or maybe this, in this, the blue one it is in 2023. Yeah, in the blue one, it's different.
Right.
Yeah, the blue one, it's 3.173 for the
It's actually
Shinnecock
lower.
Bay. And
No,
the
it's
Shinnecock
actually
now
higher.
is 1.1.
Yeah, it's higher.
But, in the end, the total cost of both projects,
It seemed to come out the same on the two charts.
yes.
Because of the grant.
All right.
So the total cost of the Shinnecock Bay came in at 3.17, and the canal came in at 1.43.
1.43, yeah.
So the canal was higher than estimated,
Yes,
but the Bay one was less?
yes. And we also received 1.8 million in grants.
Right.
2.7. With the 1.8 is what the total cost is, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so, yeah. And that, the Bay one's not done yet, or is it?
It's,
It's finished?
it's approved, they're just, I think they finished paving, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
The tie-ins were done, they were finished restoration, I think, last week, so it's done and approved and online.
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually turned on?
Main's on.
Well, no ribbon cutting, no?
Oh, wait, they're not really.
No hydrant flow? What's
They will
going
make a
on?
ribbon to cut.
No, I mean,
Turn the valve?
I mean, I would have liked to know that they actually turned it on.
We just found out this week that it's up and running.
I mean, how, or, has it made a difference east of the canal?
It's not, we really won't know until the peak demand of this.
We didn't have a first flow ceremony?
I was calling that a hydrant
First
flow.
flow.
First of all, yeah.
We can go to the Chef Beach hydrant and turn it on.
Well, how about the homes, the residents
ribbon.
in the higher levels?
Yeah, well, right
You
now,
know.
it's kind of, the demand's not there. The sprinkler system is just starting to turn on, so they have adequate flow and pressure at this moment.
Yes, we did.
But it's
I guess
really
think
gonna
you have to
determine
flush the line.
in our June, July, August
I mean,
months.
can you at least like send a letter out to people that we made this major capital improvement?
Sure, yeah, and actually,
Let people know.
we have a letter
We can
going
still
out.
meet out there and cut a ribbon.
We have a letter going out because we have to send out a letter regarding our lead and copper survey. So within that was our capital project update.
Yeah.
But then we were also going to speak after the meeting. Now that we have this presentation, we wanted to schedule a.
I mean, it's a major project for
It
east of the
really is.
Shinnecock Canal. You know, it should be, I think it will be a game changer, we'll find out.
You've been hearing these complaints for years, you know,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know,
No
we did
complaints
it.
this year, so far.
No, we actually phoned, Hampton Maid was one of the first phone calls they made, letting them know that this year they should see a
Okay.
significant difference.
So they did a reach out.
And
Yeah.
they were happy to hear that. Very happy.
Okay, I'm sure they'd like to know, you know, this is very expensive, the people of the water district are paying for it,
Yeah.
you know. We need
Well,
to
with
know,
that
like,
grant,
things are happening,
they're
yeah.
paying some of it.
That's right, the grant was
1.8
fantastic.
million was basically the total cost for both drills.
Yeah, it's great.
Mhm.
So that's after our grant, the total
After the grant.
cost is 1.8.
1.88.
Yeah, for
And
both.
we have brand-new infrastructure buried,
Really
Yes.
buried.
really buried.
Very deep.
Yeah.
Thank the county, that helped.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
too.
that was
Really
a-
good, yeah.
And all the cuttings have already
Peter Scully
been taken
helped a
away?
lot at the end there.
Yeah, that's all,
The one on the,
Fred
Senate
Thiel-
Council,
Fred
yeah, it
Thiel-
hasn't been removed.
hasn't
yet.
been removed.
That's what.
Fred Thiel as well on the
That's
alienation.
got
Oh, Fred
moved.
was great with the alienation.
Very near
absolutely.
future to have that removed.
okay. Cool.
All right. So continuing on.
You got it. All right. So for 2023, project in progress proposed for this year. So I know we discussed this, I think, the last meeting, but the district-wide SCADA upgrade, which was not included in the capital plan originally, total estimated cost of $1 million across this year and next year. Rampasture Road water main replacement, which is in that capital plan, on schedule with the 2023 projection from the capital plan, and is expected to be constructed in this fall. And the meter replacement program planned for 2023 for this year is to upgrade the billing and meter reading software. Beginning next year, they're going to start replacing meters over a course of 7 years, beginning with the larger meter first, working their way down to smaller meters, for a total estimated cost of $2.18 million. As for projects not yet performed that are in that capital plan, plan number 1, we have the generator quick connects, which is scheduled for 2026. Enclose the JAC. After reevaluation, the project's no longer proposed at this point. For plan number 2, the generator quick connects are scheduled for 2028, same as the replacement of the MCCs and the booster pump generator. So all that will be tied into one project. Booster pump check valve is scheduled for 2024 and 2025. Plan 3, all 3 projects which are on the capital plan, the generator installation, chemical building construction, and replacement of the MCCs are scheduled for 2024. I'll get into it a little bit later, but
So was that a move from 23?
yes.
Okay. And that was one of these things, have it in 24? No. Right.
They had the,
You have-
originally had the Shinnecock Bay crossing,
So that,
finishing up in '24.
all right, so that's just a,
We kind of switched the priorities. to
okay, so we're gonna do
Senate
some
Council.
sort of amendment to the plan?
Yep.
Okay.
The original. Okay.
So, like I said, I'll get into it a little bit later, but based on the perfluorinated levels and the anticipated regulations, it's our belief that PFAS treatment will be necessary at this plant in the near future.
Which one?
Great.
At Plan 3. So the plan would be to have those capital projects occur with the treatment plant at the same time, because all those upgrades can be done when we're doing the work for the treatment plant. And that project would be a WIA grant eligible project. The applications for this year, for 2023 for the WIA grants are due on July 28th, 2023.
So we're gonna apply for funding for GAC filters at Plant 3?
Its applications are currently open.
Okay, so we're gonna try to get that funded with grant money.
To
Okay.
try.
Why aren't we enclosing the filter at
So,
Plant 1?
So
Is that because we're closing it down in the winter?
one is because we close them down in the winter and we
Uh-huh.
winterize it, so we drain all the water out of it and so it won't freeze. 2 is with that cost of that carbon, to run that all year, it's just gonna drive that cost up. So by not running it in the winter, you save a lot of money in operational costs in that replacement carbon, and you rely on the wells right now that don't need expensive treatment.
Okay, good. That was more expensive than we had anticipated, the carbon.
With all the new,
Mm.
originally, there was 2 carbons that we were really, or 2 perfluorinates we were worried about, and now there's 30. And they're going from long chains to short chains, and we're seeing those short chains breaking through a little bit quicker than the long chains, so.
And the carbon filters, are they still effective
They're still
with all
effective,
30?
yeah.
are they able to treat down to 4 parts per trillion?
They're able to treat down to, right now they treat down to below
Detection levels.
detection levels, 1.8.
The detection levels are 2 parts per
2
trillion,
parts, yeah.
and the MCL now is 4, right?
The proposed MCL by the EPA is 4
Yeah, it hasn't
for
been
PFAS and
adopted.
PFOA, and then they're gonna propose an MCL for 4 other compounds as well.
I have a feeling it's gonna go down to
So
detectable.
it's not, it's
in the near
proposed,
future.
it's not mandated?
It's proposed right now.
So right now, the mandate is still 10?
It's still 10 in New York, but New York also has proposals to regulate 4 more perfluorinateds at 10 parts. So that instead of having 2 regulated at 10 parts per trillion, we'd have 6.
And we're not gonna go to 4?
It will go to 4, but it's not gonna happen until the federal government passes the amendment or the law, which is expected to happen towards the end of this year, and then you're gonna have a 2 to 3 year grace period to get it up and running.
And will these filters be capable of treating to below 4?
They will. There may be some operational parameters we change, like right now, we split the flow through them so it runs parallel. We may need to go in series, just,
So it runs through one and it runs through the second?
and that'll make the system a little bit more efficient, and, you know, you can run bed to full exhaustion.
Will that affect the lifespan of the granular activated carbon?
It'll be better. It'll end up being.
It'll have a longer lifespan?
You'll use more of it. So in essence, right now, when you're running in parallel, you're using 85% of the bed. In that case, you'll use 100% of the bed,
Okay.
yeah.
And when we replace it, that's what I'm asking.
Oh, when we replace it?
Yeah, is it gonna shorten the lifespan,
It's gonna
replacement lifespan?
No, it's gonna spread it out over time. So instead of purchasing 80,000 pounds of carbon every other year, you're gonna replace 40,000 every year.
You're staggering the transition.
Yep. So
Okay.
You're taking, when you run them in series, you'll still take readings after each one?
yes, so you'll know when your bed is exhausted, and then you can still use it, schedule your change it out, put it back in, and then you switch. So the new bed is the lag bed, and the old bed is the lead bed.
But there's, either way though, we're still gonna have to swap material out more often. Because instead of swapping it out when you're approaching 10 parts per trillion, we're gonna have to swap it out when we're approaching 4.
Yep,
And if it does cross the 4, we have to send a letter out. right?
yes. We don't want it to cross the 4. Well,
Right.
right now, it's still 10,
Still 10.
but there will be a period where it goes to, there will be a time when it goes to 4.
Yeah, and you should anticipate that, because that law will pass.
And that's probably a year out.
I mean, what, like 3 years ago, it was 70.
Yeah.
That was just advisory level. That
5
wasn't
years
even
ago, it
MCF.
was 50,000.
That's the issue with emerging contaminants, you know, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to be dealing with this over a long period of time.
You're looking at 30 contaminants, 30 perfluorinates. There's
It is what it is,
5,000
replacement.
perfluorinated compounds. As one gets regulated, they invent
The
the 10
good thing
more.
is we're looking to reactivate the carbon now instead of purchasing new, because we've seen the studies that reactivated carbon has the same effect as brand new carbon. And the cost is a third of what it is to purchase new carbon.
But you have to send that out to do that, yeah.
Yeah, they
And
come
then-
take it out, react
Okay,
it, put it right
right.
back in.
But that's
Yeah.
another
Come in and
advantage of not
they
running
cook
it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's heat, and.
That's good
it's
news.
Controls you, it's a whole big process.
And you can
So
react to it like up to
those
5
chemicals
times.
volatilize, they burn off, and
Some do, but others don't, that's where you get into a
Yeah,
problem,
well,
like
it's the-
with 1,4-dioxane.
the carbon can take the heat.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's what's left over after fire.
We might get some diamonds out
A
of it.
little something out of there.
But another advantage of having a seasonal well, because now you can reactivate that carbon over the winter,
Hmm.
and you're not down, you're not losing time.
Right, so that could be some savings there. All right, we're gonna have questions about field 1 anyway. and-
I think, the only
Later
thing
on.
I'd add on to that is I think overall the cost of regeneration is probably gonna go up, particularly when you go down to these lower levels, because, you know, there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, regardless, just everything's gonna go up.
Yeah, so that, I don't know how we kind of measure that escalation over time, that's a hard one to.
Um, Yeah, I think you're right. I think the carbon manufacturers are pushing for reactivated because, again, it's carbon.
It's also more expensive for them to produce right now.
Yes, and there's a finite source.
Now, are we testing monthly or quarterly?
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
I thought we upped that at Field 1. We
Uh,
did for a while. We were
Yeah,
testing.
we were doing that to see, to give us a timeline of when our breakthrough would happen or our bed life, whether, like at the end of the year, last year, we did the sample on the 25, 50, 75, 100% of each vessel to see where we were at. And that will give us our, determination when we're gonna have to either change out or we're gonna have to send for a reactivation. So we know now that this year we'll be able to get through, that we have to do something by next season, whether we decide to react or start out fresh carbon for 2024.
So right now, we're testing monthly, I mean, a quarterly.
Quarterly on the effluent of the GAC.
As opposed to,
What's that?
well, quarterly on the effluent of the GAC, but also on each well.
Each well has to be, regardless of a detection, has to be tested
So
quarterly.
we know what's coming in, the influent.
Yep.
Is tested quarterly too, so.
Mhm.
And what's coming out of the GAC is zero, right?
Yep, non-detect.
Non-detect, okay. What about what's going into it?
Yeah, the levels are low, like I was explaining, because we haven't pumped those wells since last September. So obviously the levels start out very low. They started, I think the highest detection was like a 40 on the PFOA, on the raw water side. So, those levels will fluctuate as the season goes on.
Yeah, well 1-3 is the worst well.
Yeah.
And I think we saw 160 or 80 at the end of last season. So as we go, it'll escalate from 60 to 160 over the course of the summer. So,
Yeah, and we're also pulling a lot of water out of this water table, so.
That's why we try to run those June to September, or, June to
Okay. And now,
very short period of time.
in Field 3.
And filtered.
What are we looking at on Field 3? What kind of numbers on this stuff?
I think there was some of the short chain acids that were detected, but those are not yet regulated. I think the highest one was like a 3.
But for PFAS and PFOA, you're looking at about 4 or 5. I think we saw 7 at one point.
But on a blended effluent, we have to do a blended entry point test at the field, and that's been a non-detect for PFOA or PFAS.
Okay.
You have trends on that over time?
We do, yeah.
Could you send those
Yep.
at some point? That would be great.
Didn't you send a letter regarding the trend last time?
Can you can't project from those trends, or have you been able to? Not at all, right?
No, it's forever changing.
Yeah.
Do we put those
Unfortunate.
test results, they're not on the website?
They
They're
are
in the water quality.
And they're, yeah.
So the public could see them.
It's in-
Yeah, the water quality report is actually going out. this
I was
month.
just thinking of it as a projection tool, but it doesn't seem to. Cost-wise.
It's very difficult to trend these, because when you're dealing with the parts per trillion, it's so sensitive, so
Yeah.
you're in a range.
Well, that's what I mean, but overall time,
Yes.
I.
You have like a
wondered if
sine
it was-
wave
yeah,
inside a range.
Right, so.
As opposed to a
Yeah.
sloping graph, yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. Continue with projects not yet performed. So we have the new well planned for 2025. Security improvements, so key fobs on all the
Can
plants.
I ask you about the new well
Go
for
ahead.
2025? So right now we have, 11 wells?
Mm-hmm.
This would be 12. We don't have a location for it yet?
And we had a suggested one on Channing Cross that we brought up, I
Last
think,
time.
last time and then the prior time. And I think Jim was looking into being able to obtain, because we have an easement right now that runs through that property, because we have a water main that runs through there, to get permission to obtain enough property in that area. So first thing we had to do is the test well, which,
Where's Channing Cross?
right off Newtown Road.
North of the
Right
highway.
near,
Yeah.
What about
Westwood.
Not a bad place.
It's just west
property
of
on the-
Westwood.
on the north side of north side of Sunrise, across from the cemetery?
Yeah, we didn't look at, we were just looking at stuff that the town already owned, So savings in the purchasing of the property, if we had this, because that's also in that area where we want to put it, that's basically a direct line going east, you know, where we're going to hook into where our
Don't
new
have to
main is
cross.
right across.
Jim, is that a park? Would that be
We do-
parkland alienation
We-
procedures?
It may. We have an easement for the water line itself, so that's not the issue, right?
Right.
But it'd be a question of, we'd be expanding beyond the parameters of the.
Because the town does own that.
The town
portion,
does own the
35
property.
acres or whatever, 23
Yeah,
acres or whatever.
yeah.
Well, that's why I asked if it was park, if it was CPA. you know,
Right.
How do we own it? Is it?
And then from
Okay.
there, you could, what, pump it to the tank?
It just goes
Into the
distribution.
system.
Into the main.
It's just direct line?
Yeah, it'll help the demand and help offset the pumpage at other wells, because that side of the town, you know, gets fed from the middle part of town, so that would help offset that pumpage more in the middle and help our east side out, having a well right there. You know, it didn't have to be a tremendous well, 500 gallons a minute, or whatever the DC would allow, because it's also going through the permitting process with them, and them allowing us to pump a certain amount. But the biggest thing is getting a test well in there, finding out what quality of water we have.
Yeah,
Same
otherwise
thing on
it's
the
just all
north
no-
side too,
yeah.
you know, being next to the, you know, county yard, on that side, you don't know what you're gonna be pulling from that.
Yeah, that's
Side, so
what I was
that's-
gonna ask, because it's an industrial site, and, you know, we were talking with Suffolk County Water Authority about 1,4-dioxane and those kinds of things, you know, where their sources were. So they had all sorts of different ideas about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you
Are-
only know, but that's.
Are we still talking about the property off of Quail Run?
Yes,
Yeah.
in conjunction with the north side of the one that Mr. Schneider brought.
And the county property is,
There's a county yard.
It's to the
storage
east.
yard, yeah.
right.
So we
Okay.
just don't know what we're gonna pull out of that ground. And then if we pull something out, and then you gotta treat for iron, PFAS, 1,4-dioxane, it's just not fiscally
Okay.
responsible.
Yeah, I mean,
for
It's
us.
a good spot.
You know, my sort of question why I was looking at that property by the cemetery, which could be it's a big place, is really the viability of Field 1 as a field, because we're drawing from a compromised source, and that, you know, as a long-range plan, should we be, you know, it depending upon how much it costs to constantly swap out the carbon to make that work, whether we might be more cost-effective to ultimately draw from a more pure source. You know, so literally shift that location of that field.
Something that could be developed into a new well field.
Yes, not just a single well, but maybe in the future could handle 3 or 4 wells.
Yeah, and I think the county will probably have a requirement that you know, for these kinds of things, to consider the sub-watershed study and the contribution, not just the stagnant water that you're pulling from, but what's contributing to it. So all those issues come into play there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because, you know, I've been concerned about that lowering of that threshold, and to what degree we'll be able to, you know, meet that.
As long as our carbon's in steady state, we will be able to meet the non-detect level of those. So whether it's a more proactive approach where we're reactivating carbon or changing carbon more often, being the pricing level is at a
So-
good point right now.
Does the carbon go based on the volume of water go through it or the contaminant it treats?
Both, because carbon can do others, but it's source of treatment.
So as
is
that level
DSC.
goes up, it uses it quicker. It's not
Correct.
by the water flow.
Yes, so if you
Okay.
have a water flow, a set water flow, 1,000 gallons a minute, and you have 2 streams, one with 200 parts and one with 20 parts, the 200 parts is gonna eat through it a lot faster,
Okay.
yes.
Do we have any issues at Field 1 with nitrates or sodium, you know, saltwater intrusion?
The nitrates, yes, that's why we have the nitrate detection, obviously, because carbon is gonna raise that. But we have been not near the threshold since 2018, I believe, system's
Oh,
been running.
nitrate.
So we've been fine with there. And the same thing with the chlorides. That's the biggest thing, because there is no treatment for chloride removal. So we've been watching that. I pulled the results from since 2017 to see if there was any type of trend going high. So the MCL right now is at 250. So once you surpass that, you
What do we have
lose. Well, starting in 2017, well 1 was shut off because of the PFOA, PFOS. well 1-2 was 45, 1-3 was 70. 2018, 1-1 was 117, 1-2 was 103, 1-3 is 74.6. 2019, in order 1-1 and 1-3, 94, 81, 61. 2020, same order, 94, 125, and 70. 2021 was 95, 106, and 63. And 2022 was 91, 138, and 72.
All right, so we're below the MCL,
Yeah.
but
Below the
we're
MCL.
trending in the wrong direction.
Yes.
We have to-
And it's also, it's a seasonal field, so I wonder, if we're talking about like a 10-year capital plan, should we think about another site, possibly for not only one well, but for the other three too, that we could then pump, leave the tank where it is, and just have a booster pump to boost the water up to the top of the tank, but, because I think it'd be too expensive to move the tank, but, and complicated, but to at least have a different well field. I don't know, it's expensive, we have land acquisition costs and the cost of, 4 pumps, one is already shown, but three, I don't know if they can be reused, some of the equipment that's at field one.
Well, relative to salt though, we just authorized, I wasn't aware that USGS was doing a pretty comprehensive study for saltwater intrusion all along the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we authorized a well here, but they've had others too. That can also inform, their data can help inform those well site locations as well.
Problem with USGS is you won't see the data for years.
Yeah.
And we did it for another supplier, and we drilled monitoring wells and did a bunch of data, and that was in 2018, and
Well, that was one of the questions I asked him is, how do we get that data? We're authorizing you to drill wells on, here, but we want to know what your results are.
It's off the south side of Palmquag
So it hydrologically with the salt
Bridge.
sits on top of the fresh, right? And then if the aquifer drops too low, we end up pumping some of that salt.
So it comes over.
If the fresh water drops down, it remains, the salt water drops down as well, because it's sitting on top? Is that how that works?
down by the barrier beaches, yes.
Yeah.
Because you can drive.
So how do you end up with saltwater intrusion then downtown Hampton Bays? Is it because,
It's just,
It starts to
we're
mix
so
in the
close to the
aquifer.
water, and you have water on basically 3 sides of you. And, what you're sitting on is, the island is sitting on essentially just a bubble, like a big bubble underneath the island of fresh water. So if you're in the center of the bubble, it's very deep and you're not, but as we get to the side, just imagine you're by the side of the bubble. So you can drill through salt water to get to fresh water, or you could draw that bubble in.
This is on the sides, on the
But
north and
yeah.
south, not in the center. In the
the
center,
center
it's
was-
upper glacial, Magathie,
Yeah,
and
in the
Lloyd.
center-
That's fresh.
Wells 2, 3, 4, we don't see the impact, but at 1, since it's so close to what we suspect is that bubble.
okay, so if you move northward and maybe set the wells deeper,
It would be better.
We pulling salt water there?
Where?
At one?
but that's
At
what I'm
Wilson?
asking about.
That's
We
what
are.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're getting some
Are you
intrusion there.
pulling salt water? No,
Yeah.
but are you impacted by there are chlorides?
You have a trending chloride
So that
number.
tells you that the first thing you're gonna hit is brackish water, then you hit salt water.
So those chlorides are a reflection of intrusion
Yeah, I get
of
it.
salt water. So,
Seems like a long way, but, all right.
but
Well, that's part of that
It's in the
sub-watershed
numbers. It's on
study.
zero.
Yeah, I know.
That's-
I've
that's,
looked at it.
that defines that too, but no one's done something similar deeper, to see what's actually happening there.
there is sodium in good drinking water. You gotta have,
You gotta have
it gives
some
it some
salt.
taste. though.
There's chloride and sodium in every well we
Everywhere,
have.
yeah.
Yes, it's just the levels, You don't want it to taste salty, I don't know that salt water is unhealthy. Well, if it gets higher, it is, because you got issues with sodium. But those levels are not, they're below that level of concern, but they are,
We're all around the same time.
they're all moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, some years are
And
lower,
I
some
really,
years are higher.
I only brought that up because as we talk about a long-term capital plan, should, we've got all these issues. We've got the fact that Field 1 is down drift from the firehouse where there's a recognized Superfund site of these perfluorinated chemicals, and we have issues with nitrates. We have issues with sodium. It's a seasonal field. We know we need to find somewhere else to put at least one well for downtown. This may be the time to say, you know what? Maybe we should at least think about relocating that site to a more pristine, a better source of water. And I think it's, you know, health is a factor, but also from a, just a pure financial standpoint, you can run the numbers, because we're gonna have the constant changing of that carbon that's gonna add up over time.
Yeah, and you're gonna have constant increase in salinity from sea level rise, which is one of the big drivers of that. So.
Is it
how do you
You know,
possible-
project
and the
out?
year-round population may grow. You
It
may
could grow.
need a field that you can operate year-round.
Yeah.
Is it possible to move the GAC filter?
Yes.
That's an easy, well, not easy, but it's possible.
Well, I think the DEC is gonna probably make that GAC stay there, because they're still gonna probably have to do some sort of.
The DEC is a factor that.
We own it, right? The Hampton Bays Water
Yeah.
District owns it, right? Okay.
So that would be a discussion to have with them.
The
The
DEC. is-
DEC?
Yeah, the DEC wouldn't
Love
want
those
us
guys.
to abandon those wells. They
No.
would want to at least take them over and turn them into like treatment wells, because they don't want that plume to go further south. They want to control it where it is. So in essence, whether somebody has to operate that, whether it be the DPEC, the EPA, or the, you know, the party responsible,
Mhm.
somebody's gonna have to pay to operate that.
Right.
But for us, if we leave there, we take our filters with us, or we sell them our filters and get new filters, but, yeah.
Okay.
So you've obviously had some thoughts along the same lines.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's keep going, and we can circle back on that issue, whether that's something we want to think about as part of our capital plan, cost it out.
Let's see, so jump back, so the security improvements, like I was saying, is just really, key fob and security updates. Those will be, not scheduled right now, they're gonna be likely included as part of each of the plan upgrades that we have moving forward. It just makes sense to tie them in with the larger projects than do them separately. For tank number 1 rehab, scheduled for 2027. Obviously, each year we do an annual tank inspection, so after each year when we do the inspection, we'll just reevaluate, make sure that everything is up to par.
So that's a shift from 23 to 27?
Yes.
Okay.
So we go up there every year and look at it, and based on our NACE inspectors, what they're thinking is 2023 was pushed out to 2025, pushed out to 2027, but I think 2027 is gonna be the time to do it.
Okay.
And, all right, so similarly with the tank 2 rehab, scheduled for 2029. And again, after each annual tank inspection, we'll review in case anything comes up, but at the moment, it's scheduled for 2029.
It's still 2029?
Yeah.
Right, and there's nothing glaring right now. These are just scheduled upgrades because we understand what it's gonna
Life
take to
expectancy, yeah.
rehab them and
Right.
keep them working. Okay.
Okay, so now we're jumping into projects that we believe are necessary, that are not actually included in the capital plan at the moment. So jumping back to what we
So there's,
discussed.
on that too,
Mhm.
because we're talking about a 10-year capital plan, but
Right.
we're really talking about the 10-year capital plan, which was done in 2020.
2020.
2020.
Yep.
So are we talking about a new 10-year capital plan that would be from, let's say, 2023 to 2033? Because you're gonna start
Jumping
adding
into this.
projects.
I think so,
or they-
Yeah.
Okay.
At least
So it's
updating
an
the table.
updated, because we do that with our regular capital plan. We do, you know, 5-year capital plan. And
Typically,
every
we
year
would-
we update it. So we're losing a year and picking up a year. So I don't mind having a 10-year capital plan, because I think for some infrastructure of the magnitude that we're talking about, it makes sense to do a 10-year plan. And it's good for the public to see what's coming our way. So yeah, I think that maybe we should be talking about doing a new 10-year capital plan.
Yeah, we were just speaking, we want to revise this one and
Yeah,
present.
and so we're gonna include projects then beyond 2029. We're gonna go all the way to 2033 potentially.
Correct.
Okay, all right, sorry, I just.
No problem. And some of these that I'm gonna talk about are actually gonna be even, more recent than 2033. So we discussed previously the plant number 3, what we have we believe is necessary is that wellhead treatment for the perfluorinateds. Again, we're anticipating a schedule for this work to be done for 2024, just based upon the expected regulations coming down. And again, grant eligible, but would need funding to go ahead and reach out for that grant. Plant number 5, similar to plant number 3, we're seeing perfluorinated levels. They're not as elevated as plant number 3, but looking down the line, we would anticipate wellhead treatment for perfluorinateds at plant number 5 as well. At the current regulations, there's no work proposed, but with the proposed federal regulations and state regulations, at that point, if we see the 4, that treatment will be required. If the federal regulations pass, like I said, we would need to install treatment by the end of 2026 in order to meet those federal regulations. Similar to plan number 3, being an emerging contaminant project, that would be a grant eligible project and again would need funding.
Can I ask, like, with Suffolk County Water Authority, and they've been dealing a lot, particularly in the Huntington area, with 1,4-dioxane. So, I mean, they increased their rates, well, through I think quarterly surcharge.
Quarterly surcharges, yes.
A lot. I mean, that's like $20 a quarter.
$20 a
something.
quarter,
It's
yeah.
like $80.
A year.
I mean, you're painting a picture of the future here that has wellhead treatment at, we have it on one field, at 2 additional fields.
Yes.
It's beginning to sound expensive. And we were not our customers were not affected, obviously, by that $20,
Right.
Per quarter, but,
They've done it, South Huntington Waters.
are we anticipating that we're gonna have to adjust something here to cover these costs? Or we're gonna try to get grant
I mean, we're
funding?
definitely going to try to get grant funding. I mean, with these perfluorinateds, the grants have been geared towards emerging contaminants and what's the other one, John? I think I forget, but they've been geared towards emerging contaminants lately. So I think there's a better chance of getting a grant for these kinds of projects with the perfluorinateds.
Then it's the
But that would be the goal, yeah. So-
But the maintenance costs
The
are.
maintenance costs, yes, is something that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a real concern with this
Yeah.
because over long term, this is going to.
The slight difference that you could get is plant 1, as John said earlier, you're seeing much more elevated levels of PFOA and PFOS than we've seen at plant number 3 and plant number 5. So we would expect that carbon to last longer. So you would have less change outs as long as these levels stay where they're at. But yeah, you are still talking about change outs and operation costs.
You're
Yeah,
referring to a
something's
new
out of control.
filter.
You have no
Yes.
control over.
You know, so with Suffolk County Water, they have probably 1 million or so customers.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
So
Yeah.
they got a lot of people they're spreading that cost out over to deal with the 1,4-dioxane in one particular community. And with these, they have a lot of granular activated carbon now too.
Yes.
So we don't have as many people to spread that across. We have, how many customers?
7,200.
7,200.
Yes.
So it could be more financially impactful.
Would
if
it-
we don't.
we would have
That's
to-
why getting the grants are gonna be so.
Yes.
But
Well, we
for
can.
maintenance, we would have to look more at, I would think, usage rates.
Yeah, I mean, you
which is
can't
the-
count on grants, that's really, to me,
No,
that's
I'm
the
saying
issue.
for maintenance, you would have to look at the
Yeah.
usage rates and what it's taking to maintain it, because, like, we obviously have residents that use a lot more water than other residents, and they should carry more of the cost.
So, if you live in Southampton, you would know that, you might not, but Suffolk County Water has 2 ways of getting it. One is the capital improvement water quality surcharge, which everybody pays, but they have a conservation rate. And a conservation rate is a significant step up from your standard, washing dishes rates. It's for big irrigators. And when you hit that rate, you're paying a lot more money. So that's like, or a tiered rate.
That's where we have a tiered rate.
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also important to note that we didn't create this problem that we're solving, right?
Right.
And the companies that did, we do have litigation to try to recover some of these costs, which, who knows how that will go.
And I believe John, correct me if I'm wrong, though, these issues were also presented to Napoli as we had these emerging contaminants at other fields, and the projection of operation costs and changeouts and stuff was also included in that lawsuit
Yes.
as well.
Then the people of Hampton Bays should not have to bear these costs, nor bear the, the fear that their drinking water, may have these emerging contaminants in it.
Right.
That's not fair either. So we're doing our best to make sure that, and we are not only doing our best, we're actually succeeding in making sure that the water that they drink does not contain any of these chemicals. And that's why we have to be proactive and think ahead to where we might need additional carbon filtration. Anyway,
And in addition to that, the population has grown. In the last census over the past 10 years, I think Hampton Bays Hamlet has grown by
Yeah,
1,200,
yeah.
pretty considerable.
Yeah, it's,
And-
at 200 gallons a person, it's.
Is that what it is per day? Yeah,
On a
roughly?
peak day, it's actually more like 400 or 500. On a regular day, it's about 200.
Okay.
So during the summer, it could be 400 gallons more per person, and it's 5,000 gallons a day.
Mhm. Like other communities out here, the population is going up, and I would assume Hampton Bays
we
population is
did,
going to
we
be
did
up.
adjust the rates. We did
Yeah,
go
we did,
up.
we
Yeah.
went 10% in January.
And that's helped a lot, because the volume's high too.
Yeah.
So we're getting 10% more on a greater number.
And we raised the tier as well. The tier went up 10% each tier.
I'm sorry, John.
No, it just occurred to me, we were talking to the Suffolk County Water Authority the other day, and, they're saying on the east end, they can see who's large consumers, and particularly it gets to irrigation issues, which we all know. And the question is, how do you enforce that, and how do you manage that? But I'm wondering that if our water district, Hampton Bays Water District, if we could have access to that data and see.
We have it.
Yeah, but I mean, as a way to compare what's happening just in the Hampton Bays
No,
in this
we have
client
it.
grid
Hampton
list.
Bays,
The new
we-
billing software should be able to provide some of that functionality.
Yeah, the new, but it has, not yet, right?
Well, we could pull the top 10 users of commercial and residential.
Yeah, you
And we
can
send out-
now.
And we send out letters to them notifying them that they are on the top 10, whether they know it or not, whether they want us to come and do a survey of their property, make sure they don't have a leak. And like the problem with the irrigation, we always suggest we can talk to them until we're blue in the face, and, please don't turn them on or do not even, but the biggest problem is enforcing it, coding.
Yeah,
Those are the
because
biggest
I was, I just was thinking that it would be a good way to make a comparison to what the water authority numbers are versus what this district are, to see if it actually correlates. Because they're saying that it is the largest problem that they have in the summer, particularly for irrigation
And it's
and
not just
systems.
Suffolk County, Riverhead has the same
E-
problem.
everywhere, yeah, that's what they're
Every water
saying,
supplier,
yeah.
And some of those users may use private wells, but there might be something coming down that will, because these perfluorinated compounds, they don't really want private wells
Right.
aerating them either, putting them into the air, so they might be forced to connect to public water down the road.
Yeah.
So,
Which
so
is-
right now, I don't know, maybe it's better that they don't connect to our water supply, because they're such big users.
Good for revenue, but bad for.
Bad for, yeah, exactly.
So,
People like green lawns.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so what
don't
if somebody
understand
has county water and a well, how do you police that?
county water or our water?
No, well, any municipal water, but they have a well for irrigation,
Yeah, lots of
how do you
people
know
do
what
A
they're
lot
doing?
of people do it, that's the problem.
You do.
But how do you enforce that, you know what I mean? Like, you can't.
Pretty hard to.
Well, they may be mandating testing of private wells, and if they exceed these limits, I mean, there are people who have private wells for drinking, not too many in Hampton Bays left, but, we want to make sure if you have a private well, that your water isn't contaminated, with these chemicals, but
But you also have wells that were put in for a specific purpose, they're identified for farming or for nurseries or that kind of thing. And those, they can identify immediately because it's right there, and they can react differently to that. But homes,
Because, I mean, I'm just
So
thinking,
right
I'm
now,
just
there are
thinking,
homes that are on our water, but they also have private wells for irrigation.
yeah,
And right now, I don't believe those private wells for irrigation have to be tested for these compounds.
No.
no.
But that law may be coming, because there are concerns about pumping up that water with the perfluorinated and those, they come off into then the atmosphere.
I'm just thinking, just the farmers in general
Yeah.
with the wells for irrigation,
destroy
and
them.
if they had to pay to irrigate their fields, I mean,
They'll
or
have
put
an
in these
exemption.
systems to
I would
treat
hope so.
the water that they irrigate their
Because
crops
no way.
with.
You don't
We
mess
could
with
never,
that. Yeah.
we
We
could
couldn't
never-
supply the
400
water.
gallon
we
wells
can
never
never
Right.
supply
supply.
enough water for farmers to irrigate their
That's
fields.
six-
Yeah, I
400
mean,
gallon
food
on
production
each gallon.
versus someone's green lawn are two
Yeah,
very,
but I'm
very
just saying, if
different
you're
things.
saying that, you know, you can't, they're gonna have to get their wells tested if it has these contaminants, they can't.
And golf courses too.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, that's
tremendous
insane.
users. They all have
And
private
some of the
wells.
contaminants are allowable for irrigation for food production, you know, which I find kind of interesting too, so, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the
I was
largest
meeting the other day with
consumers-
the Water Authority, and, you know, that, in some of these areas where you have a plume of these chemicals, that private wells for irrigation may be an issue.
Yep.
So, down the road.
There
Yeah,
are
we
private
have that
wells
with
that are
Scout
used
Plum.
for,
That's exactly what we have there.
there are private wells that are also used for heating and cooling of homes, which is a huge source
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
you know, constant 56 degrees in the water table.
They use
Cool
an
the home
open
pretty well.
system.
Yeah, I was gonna
Just
ask.
waste it.
Did we have that in
So,
Hampton Bays?
thank you.
People are using geothermal with open loop or, yeah, open loop systems.
No, and I mean, not that I know of, I don't think
Sure,
it's.
there's
But you wouldn't really,
Yeah, you
they're not
wouldn't really know,
required
but
to.
there's nothing.
Oh, no, they're tremendous users of
Of
water.
Of water,
It's
yeah.
moving constantly, yes.
Yeah, and they
They're
just dump it
constantly
back,
pumping.
Yeah.
you know.
If they're
Oh.
using a well and drawing from,
Yeah,
it,
we-
you
Yeah.
Oh, they're
wouldn't
using a
know.
private well, but
Yeah.
there may be people actually on public water who are using these.
Oh, I don't think so.
uh,
Yeah,
open
that's
loop.
That'd
Would be a
their
huge
bill
amount
would
of
be-
water.
They
Oh,
would
no,
build-
in Suffolk County Water Authority, that's what they were saying, they have some
Yeah,
customers.
some of the big houses, I guarantee.
Yeah, well, they can afford it,
Yeah,
they don't care.
They
Yeah,
just write
using
the
like
check.
20 million gallons a year for their cooling, heating and cooling. you know?
So some are being mandated back to electric, some are being mandated to closed loop systems, which we can't really use here on Long Island easily, you know, because of the way we're set up. So you don't have a 60-degree, 70-degree, you don't have enough of a temperature differential.
Right.
So, you know, it's an interesting subject, but it's going to affect us going forward
There are some
here.
communities that are banning the open geothermal systems.
It's just wasting water.
Yeah. And they're using ground systems, which I think is kind of interesting. I always thought you could combine irrigation with that. You just let a little bit of your closed loop system that's going on
Yeah,
your
let it
lawn
out, yeah.
and let some of it out, you know, I mean, there's ways to get clever there, but it's an
All right,
interesting
so let's
subject.
keep going.
Yeah, but that's truthfully about the gist of it. I mean, like, we already discussed, we had the carbon change out and reactivations that I've put various district facilities with the expectation of plant 3 and plant 5 potentially in the future. But that's also obviously not on the capital plan, but it's something that we discussed needs to be taken
We
into
have to
consideration.
add it to the plan, yeah.
So with that carbon, there is one item that we are looking into is using a resin to remove the perfluorinateds.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Seen that.
They're supposed to have a much higher removal efficiency. It could essentially extend that biannual to every 5 years, but they're also a lot more expensive, so we're gonna run a little pilot, hopefully this summer, just to kind of see how they work.
What is that, like a viscous differential? You run, how does it work? You're pushing through a resin of
Kind of like the
viscosity?
resins in a water softener?
Yes, it's exactly like that, except they're geared and designed specifically for perfluorinateds.
That's interesting.
Yep.
On the 10-year capital plan where it says new wells, we talked about this, but it says new well at existing well facility. So that prices out a new well, assuming that we have the land, correct?
I think they originally wanted to put a new well at plant 4, but it was the wrong location for a new well because there's ample amount of water on that side of town, so we were looking more north and east.
Right, so that 3.7 probably assumes
We had the land.
we have the land.
That's why we're really harping on the Channing Cross.
Right, because that's just
Okay.
basically, it's 2.9 in 2019, but then that number's adjusted for inflation to 2025.
Yeah, where is the place, we looked at the bank, right?
Yeah, the bank, is for sale.
So capital.
The old bank, the old drive-through bank.
North Fork?
Yeah, the old North Fork
The
Bank.
brown one?
Yeah. There was like 2 acres there, I believe.
Where is
It's subdivided.
Just after Carvel when you're going east.
Yeah, the old
Yeah,
capital.
that one.
On
Yeah.
Park Highway.
No, yeah, the old
Old
cap, not the
Capital.
new.
Yeah, not the
Capital
newest one by
Old.
Bittersweet.
The brown one, not the white
Yeah.
one.
The old rundown one.
The one that's
So-
next to it?
The one that
Adjacent
leads-
to
It's
it?
like back in the way and it's kind of
It's severely
overgrown now.
dilapidated, yeah.
Is it next to the?
Immediately-
Yes, it's next to the
immediately west.
Capital One.
Yeah.
Immediately west,
Like a
To
adjacent.
the west of
Yeah,
it.
there's 2 lots there,
Okay.
just to the west.
It's just to the west, yeah. I'm not sure that's a great site. I mean, I think further north is just better, see deeper water. All right, so,
Well, the other one he's looking at, on the other side of the highway, is pretty much in the same
Yeah.
Same line.
location.
Same
yeah,
line.
Same line.
in terms of the capital plan, it sounds like, for the most part, we're either at budget or below budget, which is good.
Yes,
And we're
definitely
pretty
below.
much on time. Some things have been delayed, some things have been accelerated. So it seems like it was a pretty good estimation of what we needed to do capital-wise. I don't think the original plan had that ram pasture, right?
Yeah, it did.
It did it?
Yep.
Okay, it
The
did.
original plan has it, and the
But we-
blue one, you should see it.
All right, but we did it, or we're doing it ahead of schedule, though, right?
Yeah, it should be completed this year.
So,
And we project the price to be, I mean, as of now, be lower than what's projected.
we're still
Two
using
point-
iron, and
What's that, sorry?
we're putting, it's iron, or it's
Ductile iron,
ductile iron,
Cement line.
cement line ductile
yeah.
iron.
Is that still the best for these things, not
Yeah, oh, yes.
black plastic?
Virtually indestructible. I mean, you can break it, but it holds up the longest. You know, the old cast had no lining, it was just metal.
But the more inert materials, the that black
Plastic.
plastic. Because we've had issues in terms of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Leaching?
Within the pipe.
Leaching?
Tuberculation.
Yeah, tuberculation,
Yeah, that tuberculation is more common on an old cast iron that's unlined. All the new ductile is either lined with a layer
Epoxy.
of cement, or the new thing is an epoxy on the
yeah.
inside.
Epoxy coating, yeah.
We haven't delved into the epoxy coating, we stuck with the cement.
It's known.
And it's worked well.
And a lot of too over there in that area, a lot of the levels change in the ground. We've seen a lot of our casts. We had that big break, if you recall, in Springville Road a couple of years back, right by the drain. And we've seen a lot of joints that are by drains, and as the drains and everything settle, put all the pressure on them.
In the
It's split.
wintertime.
So, plastics, that's why we say plastic's probably not the best to put in that type
But
of
did we
area.
end up getting rid of the old pipe, the old water main across Shinnecock
We're waiting for the
Bay?
dredge and the
That's coming.
divers.
It's coming, yeah.
Very
The
short.
barge
Yeah,
and the
very short.
divers.
Yeah.
We're just waiting on confirmation.
And we have that built, the cost built into the plan,
Yeah, so the total cost that I gave included that.
the removal of it. Okay,
With the connection to the Barrier Beach over Shinnecock, one of the plans was to connect to the Suffolk County water system in East Quogue. And we had cast iron pipe for that project, right? One of the things the Water Authority was telling us that.
First, the Dune Road interconnect was the initial plan.
Right.
And then this was an alternate to that. We're not gonna do both.
I remember. Do we still have that pipe?
We never purchased
We
it.
never purchased.
Oh, it wasn't,
No.
it was, okay.
what about when the canoe place in was approved, there was a requirement initially that they were gonna have to pay some money for an automated gauge. So if for fire suppression purposes, if the water levels, if the pressure
would open
dropped.
up.
But we didn't do that project, we instead did the underground crossing, they were still gonna pay
Yeah.
the
We-
equivalent of.
We just,
We did.
What,
with
James.
Jim and Kathleen's help, we received, I think it was $117,000 or somewhere in that number.
Yeah.
Oh, we got.
From
We
the
got the
reckless.
balance.
We got the money.
That we're
That's
gonna
where I'm going.
push it towards the
Yep.
bond
We
indemnity.
got the money.
Right, so that should be reflected as a reduction in the project cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the two interconnects are still there on the
Yes.
Tuckahoe side, or
They're
the
there,
east
but they're
side.
needed in emergency, but they're manual.
And now
Right.
that we have the redundant main, we shouldn't ever need that.
It was gonna cost us a lot of money to use that water.
So
They
we
might,
have both
they might
open.
need it.
Both wide open, yes.
That's what I'm thinking, is that on the east side, the Suffolk County Water Authority serviced side might need it from the water district.
Correct, if they need it from us, yeah,
Right, we can go and,
we can open it up front, yes.
Anything else? A lot going on in the water district.
Mhm.
Are you gonna do a community meeting or talk?
Yeah, well, that's why we had this presentation, we wanted to present it to the
I think
board.
we were
first.
thinking
Some June.
After James assumes leadership, to kind of introduce him, introduce this, assuming he takes leadership.
We have to
Some
do
shit
the
there.
Can't have a
obligatory
horse in front of the carriage, carriage in front of the horse here.
I know, so it's just, you could, I
We'll
don't think you
see.
could find
The
a-
vote of confidence there.
But yeah, sometime in June, we wanted, obviously, to present this to the boards, so you guys had an idea of what we were gonna present to the public, and, go from there.
Yeah, that's a pretty engaged community.
Yeah,
That's a nice way to put it.
I think that, they may show up, they may not show up. A lot of them might show up, So, but, it's their water supply. They obviously have the right to know, and I think it's really, the burden is on us to make what we do as readily available to the public as possible.
Mhm.
Like, personally, I'm really proud of the job we're doing.
Mhm.
Becoming town supervisor, I don't know if I was aware of the extent of what was involved with running a water district. And, it hasn't hurt having a background in chemistry, but I've also, learned an awful lot through these years. And I think this board has really dedicated itself to making sure that the water that we deliver is top-notch. That not only is the water excellent, whether it's clearer, tastes better, or void of any potential contaminants, but also that the public is aware of what we're doing and that they know it. That they know what, it's one thing to do it, but it's also another thing to make them aware that we're doing it, so that they have the confidence that they can open up the tap and drink that water and not have to buy bottled water all the time. Yeah, I think it's important that we do something out there in the public.
Sure.
So if we could schedule that, I'm happy to try that 10, but, I'm sure you'll be great at answering all the community questions. But there's a lot of things that, we have a lot to talk about with the community. Like even the fact that you guys turned on the Shinnecock Canal crossing, I didn't know it was on. And the community probably doesn't know it's on. Maybe they've noticed a little more pressure in their taps, but those are things that community ought to know.
mhm.
Yeah, but see, this is what engineers do, right? Just do it and move on.
And move on.
They have so much to do. So I always start off by saying thank you for the service that you give to the ratepayers in Hampton Bays. I mean, I've never had anyone call me, and I haven't reached out to you or Rich that something wasn't taken care of the same day, so I appreciate that service. When we do have this meeting, though, you have to be on your toes, because we do have the possibility of increased density downtown. We have some possible legislation for ADUs coming in, where you could have more and more apartments, more users. So we have to be prepared to explain what the increase in use may mean to our water district in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know Rich had sort of instituted a increase in the flushing.
Yeah, we do it twice a year. We just completed
We
our.
used to do it just once, and then
Yeah.
Rich made it twice. Are we still doing that?
Yeah, we just completed our spring flushing a couple weeks back. So we're all set and ready to go for the summertime.
Okay.
Any reports of discolored water anywhere in the district?
It was here and there when you flush, obviously,
Right.
you're gonna bring it into the,
You let
Stirs things
everybody
up.
know what expected, so.
but nothing, I mean, our phone calls are dramatically lower since.
In terms of the wellhead cleaning, we're doing one.
Yeah, we
here.
just did, well, two this year.
So do one a year, basically?
1 a year basically, and then it's every 10 years that well will turn back and get rehabbed. But the plan 4, we're going to do every 7,
Yeah.
just noting the
Yeah.
amount of
But
iron
that's something
content.
new that we instituted too, in terms of the wellhead cleaning,
Mhm.
setting up the schedule, and
Yeah.
because some were going way too long.
And if the one pops up that, it's not pumping to its capacity or its efficiency, we'll obviously do that one, but we have a pretty much schedule of when.
In terms of lead testing?
Lead testing was completed and our numbers are fantastic.
Did we get any new homes on the survey, or is it still the same 30 homes?
It goes based on the year built and then if they had any plumbing changes on the inside. So you could have a house that was built in the 60s, but they have all brand new plumbing, so that house would no longer qualify. So we have to have the original plumbing.
So you've changed the,
Some of them have changed, some have remained.
okay.
But we are working on a service line inventory, not only on the public side, but the private side, and that's required by the EPA. I think we got to be done by October 2024. We have to identify the amount of lead services we have, and then after that, there'll be directive from the EPA to replace those lead services.
Have we had any coliform issues?
We had the well, when it was, well 2-1 was pulling total coliform, and we believe it was from when well 2-2 was rehabbed, because they're very close to each other. Some of the particulates fell into the water table in 2-1.
Got a little bacteria?
Yeah, got a little bit. Nothing ever in system and nothing detectable in the system. It was on the raw water
Well,
well side. We took care of that. We just
I
had
mean,
to
the
heavily
chlorination in the
chlorinate.
system ought to take care of it too.
Yeah,
But,
that's since been resolved.
okay. Did we have to clean that well? Did
No,
have to
we
bleach
just had
it?
they basically dump chlorine down into the water table, and
Yeah.
it sits for like 2 or 3 days. You pump the chlorine out and test thereafter. Usually takes care of it.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, even when you
Bleach
rehab a
kills
well.
bacteria,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, sounds like you guys are doing a great job. So, how you do, staff-wise, good?
Yeah, we have, since Charles retired, Charles was our senior meter reader, we moved up. One of the gentlemen that basically was shadowing him for a couple of years, so now he's since taken over. It's not a senior meter anymore because of the civil service thing, but he's considered a maintenance 3 of the meter reading program. He's doing a fantastic job with that, and that then opened up a spot for another maintenance 1 that we're gonna hire this year. So we'll be at full capacity, and then obviously once Richie retires, we'll have another opening eventually for another new employee. So ever revolving door of changing.
All right.
Cool.
It's
All right,
appropriate.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I need to make a motion to adjourn our Water District Commissioners meeting? I guess I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, you have to open public portion.
Oh, wait, yeah, that's true.
All right.
Janice might have
All
something.
right, I forgot, yeah.
And
Yes.
online,
All right,
too.
so
You're on
don't go
Zoom.
anywhere yet. Maybe we do have a public portion associated with the Water District Commissioners meeting, not with the work session. So, all right, Charles.
No hands.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close public portion, seconded by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now,
Same second.
is there any other business? I'll make a motion to close the meeting of the Hampton Bays Water District Commissioners.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.